renting this house, which has been in my landlord Nancy's family since it was built in 1929. Now the house has a lot of history, and Nancy has shared stories about how it's been passed down through generations. Nancy herself lives about 1.5 acres behind me in her own home, which was built in the 1980s on a piece of her family's land. She also owns the house right next to mine, located on the corner, which she rents out as well. The entire property is huge, covering around 35 acres, most of which is used as a bean farm. The house we live in is the original farmhouse for the Miller family here in northwestern Ohio. My husband, our 2 kids, our dog, and I moved in on April 1st this year. It's a nice little farmhouse with 2 bedrooms. Now it still has the original shiplap in the mudroom and the original woodwork around the windows and along the floorboards, which adds to its charm. The newest part of the house is the garage, which is made entirely of cinder blocks and is very simple. I really love old houses with original details, and we've been fixing it up a little. Nancy, our landlord, is currently facing a serious illness. I want her to focus on her health and recovery instead of worrying about the house or minor issues like peeling paint on the doors. Now, at first, everything about this place seemed completely normal. The only small issue we had was with the well water, but we quickly fixed that by installing a water softener. Once that was sorted, we really enjoyed living here, until one morning when things took a strange turn while I was getting ready for school. I'm back in school now, working on a degree in physical therapy. After having trouble finding a job in my original field, early childhood education, I decided it was time for a fresh start. Anyway, so every morning I wake up at the same time, 6 a.m. And on this particular morning, my husband, who is a police officer, had the day off. He decided to let our kids sleep in with him, instead of me having to take them to the sitter's house in the dark. I was getting dressed in the living room, so I wouldn't wake my husband or my son, who likes to sleep in our bed, by turning on the lights in our room. That's when I saw it. The door to my children's room was open, and I noticed someone standing there, staring right at me. They were partly hidden behind the door frame, just enough that I couldn't see their whole body. This person was taller than both of my kids, about a head taller, with messy, dirty blonde curls that made them stand out. As I stood frozen, watching, they slowly pulled their head back behind the door frame and disappeared. Now the whole thing happened in just a few seconds. For reference, my daughter's bed is pushed up against the wall, with the foot of her bed right near the door frame. This setup is how we managed to fit both twin-sized beds and their dressers into the same room. There's not a lot of extra space, so seeing someone standing there felt completely out of place and unsettling. There's no way anyone could stand at the end of my daughter's bed and hide behind the doorframe at the same time. It's just not possible. So I ran into their room right away, and my daughter was sound asleep at the top of her bed, and both of them were tucked in snugly under the blankets. Then I woke up my husband, and he could see right away that I was really shaken up. He told me my pupils were huge, and I was trembling. After I told my husband what I saw, he went to check the room himself. When he came back, he said there was no one there, and that I might have just imagined it. I said he might be right. Even so, I know what I saw. Now, this happened about 2 months ago, and the reason I'm sharing it now is because something strange happened again tonight, but this time to my husband. He was brushing my daughter's hair after her bath when he suddenly saw a black shadow move across the doorway of the children's room. It happened quickly, but it was clear enough to make him shout for me right away. When I came into the room, I could see he was visibly shaken. Goosebumps covered his arms and legs, and even our 3-year-old daughter noticed something was wrong. She looked up at him and asked, "Who's in there, Dad?" Her innocent question only made the moment feel even more unsettling. Later that night, as we were getting the kids ready for bed, something strange happened again. A little Tyke's toy circus, which was sitting on top of their toy box, started going off by itself. It wasn't just once. It happened several times, even though no one had touched it. My husband called me from the bathroom to come see what was happening. As I walked toward the toy, it went off one last time. None of their toys have ever gone off on their own since we moved here, especially not this one. It's a small toy circus that only plays music when the little acrobat is on the tightrope, and you have to lift one side to make him slide across. It doesn't just turn on by itself. We plan to set up cameras in the kids' room and around the toy area this weekend to see if we can figure out what's going on. It's the only way we can try to catch anything unusual happening. This house, built in 1929, has so much charm and history. But it seems like it also came with a lot more than we expected. Definitely more than what was listed in the rental agreement. I grew up in Ohio in the 70s, and my childhood friend Joe and I spent as much time outside as we could. Joe lived on a farm next to a big forest. My parents would drop me off at his place in the mornings, and we'd spend the whole weekend in the woods. We'd only come out when it was time for school. We loved pretending to be explorers. We built shelters, set traps, tried to start fires with sticks, and did all kinds of outdoor stuff. When we were in high school, we got the idea to have an adventure, like in the movie Stand By Me that had just come out. We planned to walk along the railroad tracks in the countryside, but instead of looking for a dead body like in the movie, we wanted to find cool bridges to fish from and places near the tracks to camp. And of course we knew it was dangerous and probably not allowed, but we were just kids. We had so much fun. We found beautiful rivers, explored bridges no one else visited, went fishing, and even hid when trains passed by. And at night, we camped in the woods near the tracks and made small fires to stay hidden. But nothing bad ever happened to us. After high school, Joe and I went our separate ways. We both moved away but stayed in touch and tried to plan visits so we could see each other sometimes. One summer in the mid-90s, we were both back in town for about a week. During the day, we spent time with our families, and at night, we either went to a bar for drinks or sat outside Joe's house by a fire, talking about the old days. Then one night, Joe and I started talking about our old Stand By Me trips, and before long, we decided to take a day to walk the tracks, camp for one night, and then head back home. When the day came, we started early in the morning. My wife gave us a ride and dropped us off at our old starting spot, just outside our hometown. She thought we were crazy and made sure to say so before she drove off. After she left, Joe suggested we try something different this time and walk in the opposite direction to be more adventurous. We knew the area well and had a map. We didn't bring fishing gear, but we had some canned food and other supplies. Before it got dark, we chose a spot to camp. It was a thick forest with trees all around the train tracks, making it feel like we were in a tunnel. We had small hammocks to sleep in, but before setting them up, we decided to scout the area a bit. This was something we used to do back in the old days too. We would walk around a bit to make sure we weren't accidentally camping in someone's backyard. We walked about 100 feet into the woods and up a small hill. We figured that if we didn't see anything from the top of the hill, it would be fine. But when we got to the top, we noticed an old building down at the bottom, about 100 yards into the woods. It was hard to see, but it was there. We both guessed it was probably an old sugar shack or something because there didn't seem to be a road leading to it. From From where we stood, it looked empty. Everything was quiet, no movement, no lights. So we decided to walk a little closer to check it out. We went down the hill slowly, and as we got closer, we realized it wasn't a sugar shack. It was an old church. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. The building was small and sagging, with wooden planks almost black from moss and rot. The windows didn't have any glass, and there were no doors, just open doorways. We got close enough to look inside and saw rows of pews and a raised area at the front where a preacher would stand. We didn't go all the way in because we didn't want to. Other than that, there was no sign of anyone around. There were no footprints, paths, or roads, just an abandoned church. We left right away and went back up the hill to the spot we had picked for camping. Having the hill between us and the church made us feel a bit better, but we still felt uneasy. We told ourselves it was just the natural creepiness of seeing a church in the middle of the woods. By then it was getting dark, so we decided to set up our hammocks, get some sleep, and leave early in the morning. As night fell and we lay in our hammocks talking, we started to hear something coming from the direction of the church. It sounds like people singing, and it really did sound like singing. We both got out of our hammocks quietly and crouched down, trying to listen more closely. We listened for a minute or two, and the singing kept going, but it didn't seem to get any louder. Finally, we decided to quietly climb back up the hill to see if we could figure out where the sound was coming from. From our old adventures, we still knew how to move silently in the woods. It felt natural to us. The moon was barely out, but it gave just enough light to keep us from walking into a tree. Still, it was almost completely dark. We didn't use flashlights as we quietly made our way up the hill, and we didn't say a word. When we reached the top, we saw a light in the distance. It was coming from the church, and the singing was coming from inside. Joe and I leaned in close and whispered to each other, basically saying, "Can you believe this?" The light looked like it came from candles because it flickered, but no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't figure out what they were singing. It sounded like church music, but in a different language. We sat and watched for a while, trying to see who was inside, but we only saw shadows now and then. We didn't plan to get any closer either. We were about a football field away and wanted to keep it that way. The singing went on for a bit, and then it stopped. After that, a loud male voice started chanting. I was already scared, but that voice really terrified me. It sounded like an old preacher from a movie, but he was speaking in a different language, so we couldn't understand a single word. After a while, the man would say something, and then a group of voices would answer by singing. This went on for a while, and then they all started a long, loud wail that just kept getting louder and louder. It was so loud and unsettling that I covered my ears. Then it suddenly stopped. I was about to say, "Let's get out of here," when Joe grabbed my shoulder and whispered, "They're coming out." From where we were, we couldn't see them clearly, but we could make out a line of people walking out of the open doorway, holding hands in a single file. Some of them were holding flashlights. They started singing again, and the flashlight beams began moving toward us and the hill. We quickly ran back to our campsite, grabbed our stuff, and headed straight for the tracks. Once we were on the tracks, we ran in the direction we had come from. After a few minutes, we stopped and looked back. We could see lights coming down the hill. The lights were moving in a strange, shaky way, like the people holding them were waving them around. Eventually, the lights disappeared, and we reached a road. From the map, we knew a small town was about 15 minutes away, so we walked there. When we got to a 24-hour gas station, we called my wife to come pick us up. My wife and our friends thought it was just kids playing around, but I heard those voices, and they definitely didn't sound like kids to me. I don't know who those people were, but it was the creepiest thing that ever happened to me in the woods. I've always been the kind of person who pays close attention to everything around me. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been extremely shy, which made me more of a listener and observer than someone who speaks up often. I would sit quietly, watching people and noticing things others might overlook. And over time, I realized this sensitivity also made me feel deeply connected to the unseen, almost as if I could sense when something wasn't quite normal. Even though I feel connected to the paranormal, I still choose to be skeptical about whether it's real, at least until it comes to my own experiences. The experience I'm about to share has stayed in my mind for years, and has been something I can't stop thinking about. If anyone has any idea about what this could be, whether it's paranormal or not, I'd really appreciate hearing your thoughts. So this happened during a summer trip to my grandparents' house when I was about 12 years old. Their house was an old farmhouse, built many years ago in the northeastern countryside of the United States. The house always had a strange feeling to it, like it was alive in some way. It sat in the middle of a large, empty field, surrounded by thick woods that felt dark and endless, even during the day. I don't know much about the history of the area or the house, except for my family's personal history, which I'll share later. My parents, siblings, our dog and I were staying in the house for about a week, sleeping there each night. The house had 3 floors, and I decided to sleep on the top floor by myself. But something about the top floor was different. It felt colder, quieter, and once you passed the second floor, it was as if you'd entered a completely different house. And the feeling of being alone up there was overwhelming, so it almost impossible to relax, and I barely slept at all during those nights. Still, I'm not sure how much of that was just me being young and easily scared. One day, the whole family was outside having a backyard barbecue. Everyone was laughing and enjoying their time together. But for some reason, I went back inside for a moment. I turned the corner toward the staircase, and at the bottom of the steps, I saw my dog standing there. At first, I felt relieved to see him, but then I noticed something wasn't right. I called his name, expecting him to perk up like he always did. But instead, he turned his head toward me very slowly. His face was completely blank, like he didn't recognize me, which was unusual since he was always so happy to see me. And the way he moved was slow and unnatural. Then, without any reason, he turned his head away from me and walked straight ahead until he disappeared from my sight. The strangest part was that he walked straight into a wall. There was nothing else there, just the wall, but I had just seen my dog walk right through it. It made no sense, especially since he had been acting so strange before. My heart was pounding, and I felt frozen for a second before I bolted down the stairs as fast as I could. My only thought was to get to my family outside. When I got there, I ran straight to my dad, but as soon as I reached him, I froze again. Right in front of me was my dog, tied to a pole in the backyard. He was on a leash, calmly lying there, unable to move more than a few feet. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it. How could he have been inside the house, acting so strangely, and then be here outside all along? Nothing about it added up, and the fear in me only grew stronger. I quickly asked my dad how long my dog had been there, and he said my dog had been tied to the pole next to him for the past hour. I tried to tell my family about what happened, and I've even told my friends. They say they believe me, but I can see it in their eyes. They're just pretending to make me feel better. There's always that look, the one that says they think I'm imagining things or making it up. But I know what I saw that day, and nothing anyone says will ever change my mind. It was too real, too vivid, to just be my imagination. For a long time, I tried to find comfort in the thought that maybe what I saw wasn't something scary. Whatever that figure was, I know one thing for sure. It wasn't my real, living dog. The way it moved, the way it acted, and especially the way it disappeared into the wall, made that clear to me.